Welcome back to Piece of Work. I'm Danielle Tantone, and today I have on the show with me a good friend of mine who's also a colleague and someone I highly respect, Brian McArthur. He is the owner, CEO, lead guy at Design My Medicare. So I originally met him when I first started doing Medicare about 6 years ago. We were both working for another company, and he's since branched out on his own. And now I actually hang my Medicare hat with him on his team, even though I'm not super active. I do still serve a Medicare book of business and grow it a little bit here and there. But anyway, I wanted to bring Brian on. I think we have a couple of valuable things that we'd like to share about Medicare, but also just about life and coming off of busy season and balancing work life, which is never a really good balance, actually. So,
Right.
Brian, I don't know, take a minute to tell me to share a little bit of who you are and why you wanted to come on my podcast and what you want to talk about today.
No, I appreciate you having me on. Actually, I've been on before, and
Yes.
when I listened to your episode with your friend Jenny, which I took the time to watch and listen to and suggest anybody did it, I think I texted you and I said, "Boy, I wish I talked less the last time that you had me on because it was just so nice hearing your perspective on a bunch of different things." So this is you've extended me the grace of a take two to spend some time with you today. And yeah, I live in San Diego. I have a wife and two 16-year-olds, boy-girl twins, and run a small but growing business and trying to juggle a bunch of different chainsaws at the same time. So
I know how that goes. Yeah, 16-year-old twins are no joke. I tell my new moms at the hospital, I'm an OB nurse as well, and every single day I say teenagers are way harder than toddlers. Just wait till she's 18, 16, 17. So yeah, it's a whole different ball game, isn't it? Taking the struggles and the worries that you have about a 16-year-old versus a 16-month-old.
yeah,
And
we're going through it right now.
yeah, and then every kid is different. I'm sure even with twins, you have seen that. Of course, they're boy and girl, but even if there were two girls, I bet there would be differences in how people experience the world and the struggles that they have through that, for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you feel like you're doing the best you can, and then you don't always get these moments to self-reflect on whether you're doing well. And if you think you're doing well with it, you could be right, you could be wrong. And I think
And
once
usually
they
you're a little bit of both. It's not really something that's black and white or that you can get right or wrong. We all make mistakes every day, little ones, big ones, and we do the best we can as parents. You don't get a rule book. It's not a clean path. It's like a windy road. And one day things are good and you think, oh, I'm winning. She's actually talking to me. And then the next day she won't even reply to your text. And you're like, what the heck did I do wrong?
Yeah, it's interesting. About 10 years ago, I attended something called the Hoffman process, which is like this 7-day retreat. You kind of work on yourself. It's amazing. And without giving away all of it, because I would never do it justice. I would suggest anybody does it if they can do it. It's a great gift to give to yourself. But you do spend a lot of time reflecting on your childhood and coming to a place where they get you to this place where you just realize your parents were doing the best that they possibly can, which
Totally.
was probably not perfect. And yeah, so now as a parent, and I'm starting to hope that our kids come to that realization at some point. And it's tough because once they start growing, and it's not just that, oh, they're getting closer to age 18, not that your parenting responsibility stops or that they stop being your kid. When they physically start growing and you just see them walking around with their chewing with their mouth open, and you realize, I cannot believe I didn't address that. And then you have,
And
I'm
that
pretty
reflects on me.
And then you just think, I had 14 years to fix this and I didn't, or to lead by example, and now you wanna fix it in 5 minutes, and it's
Right.
also not the way it
That is
works. So
such a good point.
yeah,
Yeah. I was going to say, I do have my oldest is about to be 20, which is absolutely
right.
unbelievable. And we've had It's been a rocky road the last couple of years. There's been a lot of resentments and just it hasn't been easy, even though she's been my easy child in some respects. Our relationship has been tough over the last few years. And just there is some growth and some healing happening there, and it's so nice. And it does sometimes come around even faster than you might think. Like just a year ago, I was like really devastated about where our relationship was compared to where I always thought it would be. And just the other day, she texted me and said, "Wow, I really misunderstood you. I really." So it's neat to see that happen. And sometimes you can't force it. It has to just, they have to come around in their own time. So you just got to love them through it, through the hard times. And you got to really swallow your pride and try to be humble when they really can be cruel and judgmental of your choices and the way you parented them.
This is like a really wacky analogy, but sometimes I imagine things in extremes just because it makes it easier to see, and sometimes it's laughable how ridiculous it is, but it proves a point. But I remember right when my kids were like 1 or 2, I had stumbled upon this YouTube video from 60 Minutes, or so I don't remember who the 60-minute hosts were. Was it Barbara Walters or something like that?
Mm.
And they were interviewing Jeffrey Dahmer in
Oh my
prison.
gosh.
So this isn't gonna get any more salacious than that. But it was interesting is that they were showing the host and then these 2 chairs at some meeting room in the prison. And I remember thinking, like, 2 chairs, who's gonna sit next to him? And I thought, was it gonna be his attorney? He's already convicted for life, and that didn't make sense. And he comes on in his orange jumpsuit, and his father sat next to him.
Oh,
And I
wow.
remember first reaction was like total judgment. Like, I can't even believe his father would sit next to him. And it didn't take long. My kids were only, maybe they were 2 or 3 at the time. And suddenly it clicked. And I thought, wait a minute. If his father doesn't sit next to him, who on earth would? Right. And then I went down the rabbit hole. And his father actually was a devout Christian and really tried to he's passed away since, but trying to
Save
do
his
good
life.
in his life, yeah,
Mm,
to make up for his son's sins. But it was interesting where I realized, oh man, we are all in.
mm.
Like it just, if that dude could sit next to his son, I'm like, it's my job to sit next to my kids. And thankfully my kids are much more well behaved than that Jeffrey
Yeah.
Dahmer. But I just remember it was this moment where I thought, oh, this is all in.
Yeah.
If that guy could do that, then I'm supposed to step up on everything. I don't know.
That's really beautiful. It reminds me of something I've brought up on a couple podcasts about, and it's an Al-Anon principle, but it's something that we've gone through in the recovery program that I'm doing with my daughter. And it's, you didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it, but you can contribute to it. And so as a parent, it's a huge honor and it's a huge responsibility, but at some point we do have an influence on our kids, but we don't have all the influence. There's other things that internal, external, that shape them. So anyway, we got way deeper, way quicker than I expected. I do want to talk a little bit about Medicare because today is April 1st as we're recording this. And we've just come out of the entire selling season of Medicare. I've never run my business where I have really a selling season because I've worked predominantly with people who are turning 65. And obviously that can happen any day of the year or retiring. But there is a definite selling season in Medicare, just like if you were a tax attorney or something like that. And that is, we have our AEP, annual enrollment period, from October 15th through December 7th. And then we have a little break for the holidays, a break to suddenly catch up on all the things you didn't have time to do during that whole EEP season, buy all the presents, do all the decorations. And then we come back at it January through March with the OEP, which is a lesser known selling season, and it's just for the Medicare Advantage plans. But a lot of people that might be listening to this don't give a crap about Medicare. And then some of the people that will listen to it are our clients and our colleagues, and they care a lot about it. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but I do want to talk about, first of all, we chatted right before we started recording about just recovering from an intense business cycle like that, how you do it, any tips and tricks, what you're doing today besides talking on my podcast, how you recharge. And then at some point, I would like to talk about our little different philosophies on Medicare and how we grow our business and who we serve and how we serve them. I don't know. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, no, let's see. I get to think if I can address that in order. But yeah, I remember right when I started in the business and I was just like thrilled to be busy. And I saw my kids were going to this school where every parent except for me was like wildly successful, or at least that's what it felt like. And I was talking to this nice dad who's a really successful guy, and I was telling him how busy I was, and I'm sure I had a bunch of enthusiasm about it. And he was from Belarus, which to you and I is Russia, but if you're Russian, you would say Belarus is Russia.
Right.
What
Not quite
anyway?
Russia.
But he said he had several businesses. He goes, "This is that time where everything needs to be done in a short period of time." And I said, "Yeah." And he's, "This doesn't make any sense." And I never even thought about it because I was just, this is the way it is. And I thought, man, it took a guy from like the Eastern Bloc to point out how insane it is that everybody has to make changes in 7 weeks,
Yes.
which is primarily the open enrollment period. And like you just mentioned, we just wrapped up a lesser known, less flexible enrollment period. But it's crazy. The insurance companies are at capacity. They hire temporary labor that's usually not that skilled. They're behind, we're behind. And it was really exciting the first couple
I was
years.
just gonna say, not to interrupt you, but I am gonna interrupt you right there because I agree. I think I have always thought that is the most ludicrous thing ever. And in Arizona, that is the most beautiful time of the year. The heat has just lifted. Everyone wants to be outside. The last thing I want to be doing is sitting down at kitchen tables inside houses with 65 to 100-year-olds talking
Right.
about their healthcare and their insurance. Not that I don't love them, but that is not the time of the year, especially because it's also the middle of the holidays, right? Thanksgiving literally falls in the middle. You're trying to decorate for the holidays. My mom's birthday is December 8th. So literally every year, look right up to her birthday. And then I have her birthday and then frantically trying to do something for Christmas and feeling so behind because even though I'm not somebody who tries to grow my business tremendously, and I haven't even focused on growing my business, I still have to take care of my existing clients during that time because that is the only time that they can really make changes, especially if they're wanting to go to a Medicare Advantage plan from a supplement, or if their plan is disappearing like it happened last year. Typically, my clients don't make a lot of changes, but this last year they were forced to, and I had to meet with so many of them, either in person or on Zoom or on a phone call, and it takes a lot of time, especially when you're working full time. For me, this is a part-time thing. I work full time at the hospital. Then so anyway, that I digress, but I just wanted to share that like the timing of it, even the denseness of the timing is ridiculous, but also just whoever picked that time of the year. I know it has to be leading into the new year, and I guess that's why, but oh, I hate it so much. Love to hate it.
Yeah, it takes a lot out of you. And clients are surprisingly patient because I guess they just get used to it as well. But it just feels unnecessary. And I'm 10 years into really being hyper focused on Medicare. And I've never heard a rational reason. And it's not just Medicare. Other health insurance is like that as well. But Medicare is like a 7 week window.
Very
It's particularly narrow. And I've never heard anyone come close to a rational answer of like why it has to be that. That's
I don't
crazy.
think one entity enjoys it or thinks it's good. Like the clients, it's not nice for them. It's not nice for us as agents. It's not nice for the carriers. It's probably not even nice for the providers.
Yeah, it's interesting. But that being said, it is what it is.
It
But
is what
yeah,
it is. Like, we're not
it
changing it.
takes like an emotional ramp up period. Like late summer, I find myself getting serious almost too quickly. And I realize like 3 weeks into being like hyper intense and serious, I go, oh man, like this doesn't start for another 5 weeks and I'm prepared. And I'm starting to be more self-aware of like why rob myself of enthusiasm and a lack of focus with other things that are important. But you get this anticipation or anxiety, whatever you want to say on the ramp up. And then it's crazy during the season. Every year I convince myself that, oh, if I just work a little bit harder, we'll get in front of this and it'll be okay. And every time you take care of, it just gets more and more insane in the last 3 weeks. and takes a lot out of you. Like you said, then you jump into the holidays and you're trying to make up for your absence in your family during that time. And then I always say I'm going to have this emotional hangover month in January where I just chill. Honestly, it usually lasts more than January. So usually about 2 weeks ago, so what's that, halfway through March, that we're still, the business is going great and everything like that. But as far as like things that I really want to actively, proactively improve and enhance and optimize, like I definitely don't have the enthusiasm for that in January. And I usually go through most of February and maybe even a little bit of March before I really kind of lock in. And it takes a lot. There's a lot of benefits to it as well. We have a lot to be grateful for, but it's it
So, how do you
that's
navigate these changes of seasons and how do you recharge when you've been through a tough season, whether it's an emotional thing with your family or whether it's a stressful business season?
yeah, boy, I don't think I'm gonna write a book on how to do it because I don't know if I'm great at it. But I think my family has kind of learned to prepare for me to be physically present, but largely absent in every other way during the fourth quarter. My birthday is December 13th, so usually a week later I get to celebrate my birthday with my family, which is nice. And then I think as we evolve and get older and or realize the importance of maybe not being, it's a zero-sum game, right? You just can't, you can, I wasn't very present for my family in the first 7 years of building the business. I honestly wouldn't have known any other way to do it, but I also don't pretend there's no consequences to that. So I just think you have to be real about it. And then, like we mentioned before, once the kids become teenagers and you realize you have this shrinking window to solidify a relationship, to help prepare them for life, to bond with them, that it comes, you start having to set better boundaries. This year in particular, so I've got 2 full-time employees, 1 part-time employee, and it, I keep having this recurring theme that I keep reminding myself of. I think a lot of us are driven by fear, even in ways that we wouldn't even use the word fear. But if we really broke it down and spent a lot of, we often have fear, or I do.
Mm.
And I heard Jordan Peterson say 2 years ago, and I think it's even more than this. And he said something like 85% of the things you fear will never happen. And as
Mm.
I've sat with that, I'm like 98% of the things I fear never happen. So
Right.
I bring that up because one of the things that's easy to fear when you're growing a business, especially if you started it on your own, and it was the Danielle Tantone show or the Brian McArthur show. And now I'm trying to move the whole business and process from the me to the we. And I've just gotten to the
Which is
point.
kind of what we're both trying to do in some ways, in different ways.
Yeah. And I've just come to term, especially in in fourth quarter last year, as I said, Brian, there's 0% chance that everybody's going to be happy with the result. And that's not to be dismissive of other people's
Mhm.
experiences or feelings, but, and gosh, this is not going to come out the right way, but our clients tend to adjust, our family adjusts, but like it's easy to focus on the clients, but our processes have had to evolve. Like every year the business gets bigger and the 7-week period stays the same. So the only
Mhm.
way we can try to continue to deliver good results is with technology and staff. And, this deep into it, I think you could argue time management if it was a newer Medicare agency that ramped up really quickly, but we've been doing it for 10 years. So you recognize the seriousness of preparing before the season and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I think we all have to realize we're only one person. We all have the same amount of time. There's only so much you can do. And if you
yeah.
have competing goals and things that you want to do with your life, there's only so much you can do in a week, in a day, in a life.
Yeah. And even right now, without going into detail, we have a teenager going through something right now. And
And relate to that. And we'll have to
yeah,
talk about that offline sometime.
yeah. I heard when you mentioned with Jenny, you had shared that you had your relationship, I think, was struggling with one of your daughters. And then when I heard your episode with Jenny, I got a little bit more clarity on it. But when I told my staff and they said, "Hey, Brian's got a family emergency and it's not something that's resolving overnight." But then I also thought about it and I said, honestly, it is sincere for my staff to tell people that for the last 3 months because it's true. But I just thought one day that's going to be resolved. And what's the real truth here? And the real truth here is that Brian's role is changing a bit, right? And I just rather than have a temporary reason you can't speak to it, not even that you can't speak to me, but that's just we have people and processes in place to try to resolve what they can. And I'm always here if something falls outside the bell curve. But I, even in the midst of my operations manager saying Brian's got a family emergency, which is true, it's that won't always be the reason. And I was just like, okay, what's the core message that doesn't have to change, which is we're here, we've got a people, processes, let me see if I can resolve this. And of course, if you need to speak to Brian after that, we'll arrange that. But what I've realized is when I would just say yes and yes to everything, my time with my family was already low on the priority, which means it's the first thing
To go.
to get squeezed even more
Mhm.
when you're indulging and indulging.
Not only
And
time with family, but time for your own health, time for your own, like all the things that recharge you and refuel you and nourish you, which is super important. You can't take care of anyone if you're unhealthy or dead. That's a very
yeah,
real thing. We have a friend from our in the business that passed away, and it just I don't know the circumstances, but it's gosh, life is precious. We
yeah,
got to take care of this body that we were given.
yeah. And you're always pretty forthcoming, so I'll just share. I'm 51,
Yes.
and when I turned,
Same. My birthday's in September, yours is in December, and I'm also
okay,
51, so
there you
I
go.
got you
Yeah.
beat
So,
there.
but I'll tell you what. Once I turned 50, I've never really focused on age, but man, like once I turned 50, I've gotten way more nostalgic. I've gotten way more conscious of health. I'm not mastering it yet, but I spent more time in the gym last year. Not a ton. I'm not writing a book in physical fitness by any
Mhm.
means, but spent more time exercising last year than any year in my adult life,
It's awesome.
which all sounds great. But like a lot of it is just realizing, like, even if you're going to convince yourself you're going to live till 100, which I had to tell myself at 50, I said, Brian, people who eat and drink the way you don't live till 100, but let's just say you're right, Brian. And I'm making improvements in those areas as well. But I thought you're still halfway through this thing. And the fact is, you're probably not going to live till 100, which is okay. But I've just started to observe and start to relate to clients a bit more. It was always like I'm not as far every year. I'm a bit closer to 65 myself.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
to
Pretty
speak to
soon
it.
we're gonna be selling Medicare to our friends, our
I know, which
our age, our peers, I guess I should say.
yeah. And one of the I'll wrap up with this because I don't want to monopolize, but the my kids started this new high school last year and all of our tuition was going there. And so everything you do is related to school.
Right.
So we started going to high school football games, which we didn't have a horse in the race. Our kids don't play football, but as a community, we would
You're
go.
still part of
And
the team.
yeah. And there was this family who kept bringing like this 93-year-old grandpa. I presume maybe they had a kid who was an athlete or something. And he was in the same row. So he would come down the concrete steps and he'd kind of shuffle. We'd all get up and shuffle just like you would for anybody. And he was doing it, but everybody has their arms out because they're like, you can't let this guy fall. Not that he ever fell. But after about 6 home games of watching this guy, I realized number one, this guy's like 92. I go, I'm probably guessing this football game is probably the highlight of his week, which is, but I thought, in order for this guy to be here, 3 things need to happen. One, he's got to be healthy enough to do it. Even if you do handicap parking, it's a good walk. You got to go down the concrete steps,
Mhm.
shuffle. So number one. Number two, mentally, he's got to want to go, right? Because you can get old and grumpy with ailments and stuff like that. And I'm
Yeah.
starting to recognize, like, I don't feel old and grumpy, but I know I'm capable of being
Mhm.
that way if some curveball showed up. So I want to stay out in front of that. And then the third part I realize is his family's got to want to bring him. Now he was in very good shape for being 92, but I'm like, it's a little bit more effort to bring grandpa, right? And I was
Totally.
like, it's 3 out of 3. And if it's 2
Mhm.
out of those 3, that guy's not at the
It won't
football
happen.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I find myself in this kind of like mapping out of life, which is okay. And I welcome it. But it's interesting. I did not expect to be thinking this way at 50, or I've gotten like way more nostalgic, which is interesting. So
Speaking of nostalgia and speaking of games and speaking of being part of the team, I told you I was talking to a friend before we got on here today. I was talking to my college roommate who I haven't even talked to, and we had a lot to catch up on, but she is a huge basketball fan. We went to U of A, by the way, which you and I have discussed, and they are going to the Final Four. And she's, guess what? We hop on the phone, and the first thing she says to me is, "Guess what? I'm going to wait. Hold on." And then she like backed up, and I'm like, "Is she going to Italy? I'm going to Indianapolis." And I'm like, and for a second, I'm like, "Okay, what is in Indianapolis?" And she's like, "The Final Four is in Indianapolis. We're going to the Final Four." She's, "This was a bucket list for me to go see our team in the Final Four." And so we chatted a little bit about it because she recognized that, yeah, I'm not even on the team. Like she did actually play basketball, even though she was like a 5'3" white girl. But she's always been a huge fan, and she always wanted to see her team in the Final Four. And so she's going. She went to great lengths, had to pay a lot of money to get the tickets, to get really crappy tickets, and to get a flight and all that. She lives in California. But that was just, it was like on that same vein where like being part of the team, like a lot had to happen for her to go to that game. And I'm actually probably going to be able to see the game way better on my sister's big screen TV in her house than
Right.
she is, because it's in a football field. It's a basketball game in a football field. So it's hard to see when you're up in those seats. It's a small court. So
Right.
anyway, that was just a little side note that I know you're also a big sort of wannabe U of A fan. You said your
Right.
family is, and so side note, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's been an exciting year. Basketball's a game I've played the least of my whole life, but my son plays competitive and basketball and plays at a pretty competitive high school. So it's become a big part
Super
of our
exciting.
life. And my wife is the only member of her family that didn't go to U of A,
Oh
immediate
wow,
and extended family.
wow,
They're Wildcat fans. And then my son, as a result, is a Wildcat fan. And to his credit, he was an Arizona fan before this amazing season. So he's not a front
totally.
runner.
Yeah, same with my college roommate. She has been a fan through thick and thin all these years. She's like, "It took 25 years, but I'm finally going." So,
Amazing.
yeah, that's been a big theme, is just realizing, wow, like a lot, it just time flies. How are we 50? I don't even say 51. I just even 50 is like, how? And I know that our clients, our Medicare clients who are turning 65, have to feel that even more. Like how I've just met with a friend of mine who's a personal friend that I used to walk with in the mornings. And she's a little older than me, and she's turning 65 in September. And so we met because she was getting nervous about what she had to do. And so we talked about the whole process and what her choices are. And it was just that thought that, like we said, some of our friends, like our friends in our spheres, are going to be turning 65 now. And it's not just our parents' age anymore. Our parents are well over 65. Yeah, life just flies by, and there's always changes on the horizon. I think that's why I've to circle back to the other work that I do about resilience. My goal is to help people at every stage who are facing a life change, and that could be my Medicare clients who are going on Medicare, which makes you feel so old. Like, how did I get here? Most of them still feel young and dynamic and healthy, and yet they're going on senior citizens insurance. And
Right.
then I, at the other end, in every week, I'm also doing a couple shifts at the hospital as an OB nurse, helping new moms in their 20s and 30s birth their babies and learn how to breastfeed, and then watching babies literally take their very first breath. And it's a
Mm.
very interesting dynamic to be with people in these huge life changes, positive, negative, and all around, like in the same week, in the same
Right.
day, even. I know I just said a lot of different things, but
No,
I
no.
don't know. Any thoughts on any of that?
I think it's great that on a weekly basis, you get to experience that broad spectrum of people's lives and contribute to it positively like you do. Yeah, I know it's interesting. I'm never aware. I'm always aware of people if they're older than me, but I don't. I'm a little bit clueless when I'm around somebody who's younger than me.
Mhm.
Um, like I'll be talking to colleagues, or I teach a course in the Medicare industry, and like I have to realize, man, I'm like 17 years older than this young buck of a Medicare agent who's trying to grow his business like I am. But it's crazy. Even my mentor, Justin Brock, isn't even 40 yet. Right. And so it's interesting is one of the things I've noticed with you is I just never refer to my clients as seniors. And I don't notice that. I don't
No,
feel
I
like
don't
you
either.
do
I said it just
either.
now, but
Like,
I don't usually either.
yeah, because I just honestly, in the first couple of years, I'm trying to be a little bit more physically fit now, but I was like, most of these people are in better shape than I am
Mhm.
at 65 than I was at 40. So that's, I'm trying to solve that now. And it's like the, and people say, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm turning 65. And I go, look, I'm not saying this just to be nice, but so many of our clients are on Cialis and Viagra and estrogen and all. Nobody feels the way as old as they thought they'd feel at this age.
Mhm.
It's really, and I tell them that not to just blow sunshine or be kind, but I'm like, I can tell you all I do is meet 64-year-olds all day. And the overwhelming majority of them, everybody's living a way better, more active life than they probably would have thought of if they looked at their parents.
Totally.
And I, to me, I think that's pretty awesome and wonderful, especially at somebody who's eventually going to be that old. But it's wild. It's really, I don't think it has to be some big event. It's obviously this kind of timestamp event, right? But but Medicare is good news to great news. I always say the good news is there is no bad news with Medicare. You really, anything you do is going to wind up being the best health insurance you've ever had. It's almost impossible for that not to be the case. So there's plenty of room for optimism.
And I think that's such an important point that even those of us in the medical sphere in these Facebook groups, there's so much doom and gloom right now. There has been a lot of changes and it's been really hard. And oh, the carriers are doing this and they're taking away our commissions and they're dropping these plans and oh, everybody's out to get us. And oh, we're going to be extinct in a few years because it's AI is going to take over. And I think that what you just said is still true. Like even with all the changes and even with all the annoying changes, it it is the best insurance you've ever had for the least amount of money you've ever paid, regardless of which direction you go. So I would like to chat real quick just in case somebody is coming near to their 65th birthday and or their parents are or whatever the age of the listener that might be hearing this or even if you are a Medicare agent. I'd like to talk a little bit about your philosophy and then banter back and forth about how my philosophy and do a little bit more of that give and take than we did last time about how we come at it a little differently, but I think in some ways come to the same place. So when you started Medicare, what was your tell us about I know it, but tell us about how you chose to grow your business and who you chose to serve and what your overwhelming philosophy was between the two main ways you can go with Medicare supplementation.
Yeah. So I'll abbreviate it because it's probably you could probably do an entire episode on career transitions, but it was a career transition for me. I'd had a great, cushy corporate career wholesaling investment insurance products to financial advisors. So rather to try to convert that to English, if you can imagine a pharmaceutical sales representative buying donuts for a doctor's office and trying to get them
Mhm.
to listen to them while they eat the donuts and say, please prescribe our stuff. That role exists in financial services and there's different mutual
I
funds.
did a
And
similar thing in real estate. I worked for the title company and I was a title rep and basically
you
did the
got it.
same thing with the realtors. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that for about 20 years. Everybody who I'd ever met were financial advisors. And when I took a step back from doing that or that career was coming to an end, it's very disruptive. I'd watched people do it before where you get this pretty consistent, you never made less than six figures and you might make a couple $100,000 in a given year. And then suddenly if they laid off people or whatever, you've got all these great relationships with financial advisors, but you don't have a job to go calling them. So you get these
Mhm.
ebbs and flows of that. So anyway, you go from on top of the world to feeling pretty vulnerable. But anyway, when I stopped my wholesale career, I just felt like everybody talks about relationships, but I always put a high priority on building and keeping good relationships. And I didn't want to make such a big change that would render whatever value those relationships had as useless. Or maybe a better way to do it, I wanted to continue to serve the same audience, but with a bit more autonomy. You and I have talked, I
Totally.
actually built
Yeah.
my business in amidst a mental health crisis, different episode. But
And I'll link to that episode. You can go back and listen to it. It is a pretty neat episode as well. But
yeah, so I just got really focused on helping financial advisors demonstrate leadership on Medicare in their financial planning process. So we don't do any direct to consumer marketing. I no disrespect to people that do it, which is great. But we serve the financial advisor audience, and then ultimately they trust us to guide their clients through Medicare. And the client satisfaction is, of course, of highest importance. A very close second is making sure that everything we do reflects well on the financial advisor. So that's the approach that we've taken, and you have to theorize, and you can flatter yourself that your theories are a good idea. Then you have to get off your couch and go execute. And 10 years into it, it appears that I've been right on that. So pretty
it's a
much
great
everything we do is
it's a
the
great
financial advice.
little niche and a great direction because your clientele already has an advisor that they value, and like you've said before, the advisor doesn't really want to deal with Medicare, even if they're
Right.
licensed in health insurance. They don't it's so tedious, and there's so much to know and so many changes every year, and it's not a huge income source. For us, when we build in bulk, it can be lucrative, but the individual commission on each Medicare policy is very small for these financial advisors, so they're not able to get into the weeds the way we are, nor do they want to. And yet, and like you've said, I think it's a great way that you can offer something of value to their clients and then send the clients right back to them and really build them up even. It becomes a valuable offshoot instead of any kind of competition. So I think that is great. And I've done a little bit of that in my business. Just to circle back to what I've done, the way I got into it, a friend of mine who had worked with in real estate had told me about that he and his wife were doing this business, and I ended up coming to the same company that you were with at the time. And I decided to focus on people who were just turning 65. So I sent out a letter. I got a list of people who were turning 65, and I sent out a letter. And I was just really real in that letter. It was a really basic letter. It was like, yeah, I know you're getting piles and piles of mail, and it's so confusing and overwhelming. I'm in nursing school. I'm a mom. I can sit down with you and help you make sense of it. And people would just call me. It was the easiest quote unquote sale I had ever done because people trusted me after reading that letter. There wasn't a lot of competition. There wasn't a lot of people really reaching out in a personal way and sharing. I had a picture of me and my kids, and it was just very personal, not not corporate and not professional. And they invited me into their home, and I'd sit down at their kitchen table and tell them, okay, so you're going to turn 65. The first thing you need to do is sign up for Part A and Part B. Part A covers the hospital, Part B covers the outpatient care, and this is what it's going to cost per month. And then you have two different options about how you're going to, if you only had original Medicare, that would be 80%. But nobody wants 80% of $100 is great. They pay 80, you pay 20. But if it's $100,000 or $1 million, obviously that's not going to work. So where I come in is I help you not only sign up for Medicare, because I do actually get pretty involved in that, but I help you figure out how to cover that gap. And that's where we call it a Medigap plan or a Medicare supplement. So I tell them about the two routes, and there's the Medigap, MedSup route, and then there's the second route, which is the Medicare Advantage plan. And at one thing, I know we don't have a lot more time. We both have a hard stop in about 15 minutes. So I do want to wrap it up, but I think it's really interesting how, because of our different clientele, or even actually maybe more similar clientele than we realize, the majority of your clients, at least in that first 5 years of your business, and maybe still, ended up going on the Medicare supplement route because of their net worth, because of their traveling, or whatever their reasons were. That seemed like the better option for your clients. And even though I always like to be transparent about this part, because I think it's really interesting that we actually, I don't, the commissions are super confusing anyway, so I don't even really know exactly what they are. But as agents, we actually get paid less on a Medicare supplement than a Medicare Advantage plan. And that has never factored into how I try to sell them. I don't even really sell anything. I usually
Right.
just show them the options, and frankly they choose. But a lot of people have asked me, I think you've maybe even asked me, like, how I sell so many Advantage plans when to you and to a lot of agents the supplement is the better option, if you can afford it. And I think, and I've said it before, the way I do it is because I truly don't see it as the supplement being the better option. I
Mm.
And I don't see it. I don't try to sell anybody on an Advantage plan either. In fact, my friend who I met with a couple weeks ago, I did, after looking at her individual situation, I said, you really should go with a supplement. You get it for guaranteed issue. It makes more sense. So I've never, ever have pushed people toward one or the other. But because I truly believe the Advantage plan is a great plan, the majority of my clients have chosen that option. And as I've mentioned before, in Maricopa County, where I live, for years, we had a lot of PPO plans as Advantage plans, and that has changed a lot in the last year. And it has been disruptive for my clients because many of them chose that because it was like, to me, an Advantage plan is just like the insurance we've had our entire life up to 65. So why the agents and the clients suddenly expect and are only happy with a plan that has no networks and no requirements and no pre-authorization when they suddenly turn 65 is beyond me. Like, I don't understand. And why the providers say, oh, those Medicare Advantage plans, they're so horrible. The insurance tries to put restrictions on the providers. I know I'm a little bit on a soapbox right now, but it's never made sense to me because we've always had those, like, when you have to if you needed a surgery this year, you would need to get pre-authorization from your insurance plan. I would need it,
Right.
whether I'm on an employer plan or I'm on a marketplace plan or anything. Like, to me, it was no big deal that there's a network. And even as we've gone from PPOs to more HMOs, I've really tried to share and teach my clients that HMO is not all bad. We have this bad taste about
Right.
HMOs, but it's really managed care. And one thing I say all the time is the idea is that you don't want to go to a podiatrist for a stubbed toe. They want you to start with your primary care provider and then allow to go to a higher level of care as is appropriate. And it's supposed to be managed by your primary care provider. And that's, in the real world, probably doesn't work as well as they'd like it to because the primary care provider's offices, you can barely even get in. I've been talking to my dad about some healthcare issues, and he's in New Mexico, and it's not always easy. But anyway, sorry for talking so much, but that's my take. That's a very wordy version of how I've evolved, how I started my business, and how I've evolved over the years.
Yeah, no, I always like hearing your perspective on that. And it's funny because I think we touched on this last time you had me on. And I feel like we stay agnostic, explain both. The result of what I feel like is our agnostic process is that probably about 80% of our clients go with a Medicare supplement plan. Now, again, if they come by way of their financial advisor, they're usually good savers because you need to be a financial advisor and they just don't. I think the metaphor that two things I'd bring up is comparing Medicare Advantage to Medicare Supplement is not comparing a hero and a villain. Both options will be the best health insurance you've ever had. There are trade-offs between those two, but it's not a hero and a villain sort of thing. But the analogy I think of, which I feel like is why our clients go often with a Medicare Supplement plan. Do you remember the scene in Forrest Gump where he checked the mail and he got a letter from Lieutenant Dan, and Lieutenant Dan said, "Hey, I took the shrimp boat money and I bought a fruit company," which was, or his understanding was a fruit company. It was Apple Computer.
Mhm.
Sorry. So apparently we don't need to worry about money no more. And I thought that's good. One less thing. And like, he just went back to mowing the lawn. I totally checked the box in a major way. And I think that's what our clients see in the value in the supplement. But that's not, in order for that to exist, that doesn't mean Medicare Advantage has to be awful. It's still
Right.
going to be the best
Yeah.
health insurance you've ever had. And I think I get it. Like even if people tell me they want a Medicare supplement, I go, okay,
I want you to
I,
understand the Advantage
I,
plan anyway.
yeah, because I sometimes just having the bookend to compare it to is helpful. And if I tell you
Mhm.
nothing about a Medicare Advantage plan, you're going to get all this mail trying to scare the stuffing out of you. And you're going to call me up frantic and say, Brian didn't tell me that. And then,
You're gonna think you didn't share something that was important. Yeah, and I do the
yeah,
same thing. And I do have some Medicare supplement clients, but even this year when their Advantage plans were disappearing and they had the opportunity to go guaranteed issue into a Medicare supplement, I really quite strongly, I even said, most people in this Medicare space would tell you this is the better insurance. This is the best you can, and you have an opportunity to get it for the lower cost and without any underwriting. this is a really cool opportunity. And most of them still were like, no, why would I do that? I've been really happy with my Medicare Advantage plan and it's served me really well. And it's a myth that you're not going to get the best healthcare with a Medicare Advantage plan because they literally have to cover everything that Medicare covers and
Right.
more. But
Yeah.
that said, there may be certain providers you can't go to, like the Mayo Clinic, for example, that's here in Scottsdale. You can't go there if you have a Medicare Advantage plan. It doesn't cover that. So there is, and if you travel, if you live in two different homes, if you just want to be able to get a second opinion, if you want to just be able to make an appointment with your podiatrist for a stub toe, then yeah, if you can afford it, the supplement gives you a lot more freedom and flexibility. One more thing, I know we're really running out of time, but in the book that I started writing last year about Medicare, I ended up putting that one aside and finishing up the book on resilience instead, but I'll go back to it eventually. I used it the analogy because I used to be in real estate. So I used the analogy of a house, of a home, building a home. So the Medicare supplement route is like building a custom home where you choose the foundation and you choose the windows and you choose the electrician and all of it. You put it all together piece by piece and you get the very best exactly as you want it. And then a Medicare Advantage plan is like buying a spec home or buying a model home from a builder, like where it's like just
Practical.
cookie cutter. Like you get a couple choices, but it is what it is. It already includes everything. You don't have to pay separately for the flooring and the roof it's all included. But there's a trade-off. You don't get to have the exact countertops you want. You have to take from among the choices that are given. So that was to me so it's not like it's a lesser, you still have a home and it still could
Right.
be a beautiful home. But yes, most people, if they can afford it, they would way rather have a custom home that's exactly the way they want to design it. I love your name of your company, Design My Medicare. And that's what you get to do with with the supplement route is you get to design your Medicare and your overall. That's another thing. You add in quite a few ancillary plans that I haven't even really gotten into with most of my clients because you're creating an entire portfolio of healthcare for these people, not just Medicare. So I think that's really neat. And I hope to learn more and grow in that direction with you this year or next year or
Sure.
sometime in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no, I think that's a fair analogy. It's just keep in mind, it's not a hero and a villain type thing. It's going to be good news regardless. And I guess the other thing I would bring up is that even though a lot of our clients come to us predisposed to PPOs because they're just I don't want to say more successful people are used to PPOs, but whatever. The people who
They
come to
just
us,
want the freedom and the flexibility. They want to
yeah.
feel like they're in control and nobody's telling them what to do.
That said, most people just go to whoever the heck their primary doctor tells them to. Even
Mhm.
if you're on a PPO, your primary doctor is
If a
going
good
to
one, right?
yeah, they're gonna refer you. Now, you don't have to have that referral to go see the specialist, nor do you need to go see their specialist, but most of the time, we're happy to have our primary doctor quarterback us and tell us where to go. So the flip side of the Medicare supplement plan, and you were the one that brought this up to me, is that there's no managed care. You're on your own, which doesn't have to be a bad thing, but nobody's kicking you in the pants to go ahead and maybe your medical
Get
group
your
might
annual
try to move you
physical.
along.
Yeah, get your blood work done, get your the and that's another thing. So the one more point, I know we were like really running out of time, but I feel like it's funny that people that are all about freedom and flexibility are okay with the federal government running their healthcare, but they don't want an insurance company to lead them in the right direction because obviously the federal government is behind the whole thing. We're all governed by Medicare, even in OB, even in the
Right.
hospital. But what I was thinking was that insurance companies, what I've learned, I did employee benefits for years before coming into Medicare. And my thought on insurance companies is we all love to hate them, but they actually are pretty good at understanding what is best for overall wellness because that affects their bottom line. The weller we are, the more we are, the higher their bottom line. More they can keep us healthy, the less we're going to be in the hospital. So all these things that they include, these extras that could be seen as like frivolous or unimportant to me are actually very important. Dental care is like hugely important to overall health, like cardiovascular system. You don't even realize it's not just about having nice teeth that look good. It's super important. And dental, vision, the gym membership that's included, even meals like after surgery. Like there's things that are included with these advantage plans that people like to just to joke about that are not really as important as the real healthcare. But the bottom line is the real healthcare is there. They all cover your doctor visits and your hospital stays. The extras are not just extras, they're care to me. They're health care, not just sick
Right.
care. So I think that they have the advantage plans have a real advantage even for wealthy people. That's my
Yeah.
true opinion.
Yeah. No, it's great. And it's funny because like I said, I feel like I stay agnostic, but last time I explained it to you, you said, "Boy, you just romanticize a Medicare supplement plan." I said, "I don't feel like I do." And you're like, "No, you do." But that's not my intention. And what's funny because if I mention Medicare Advantage plans to just because our clients, 80% of them have the supplement, they go, "Whoa, you're really pushing the Medicare Advantage plan." I go,
I
"I'm
know,
not
it's
pushing
funny.
it. Just it's not red pill, blue pill, hero and a
Totally.
villain."
Yeah.
And then we try to maintain that agnostic process because that's the way our
I think
financial
it's
advisors present things to their
smart.
client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is someone can always go to an advantage plan later on. My parents were both on supplements for ten years before I got into this business. And I said, hey, why don't you try the advantage plan? And both of them have never looked back and they've been very happy with it. But so someone could be wealthy client, have a high net worth and choose the supplement because they're active, they're traveling, and later go to an advantage plan, which is counterintuitive because the whole message out there is, oh, when you get old and sick, you're not going to have the best health care if you're on an advantage plan, but it's not true.
Right.
They're
I
both
agree.
great, like you said. All right, we talked about a lot of things. It's been great to have you on. I know we both have a hard stop right now. I wish we could keep going, and we definitely packed in a lot of different subjects here, but I think it was a good conversation that is relevant to people of any age. And if you want, I'll put Brian's contact info in the chat if you're interested in designing your Medicare and or if you're a financial planner especially, he's great. And thanks for listening. See you next
Yeah.
time.
All right. Take care. Thanks for having me.